It arrived in a box small, square, wrapped in silver foil paper, with a satin ribbon the color of deep wine. The kind of gift that looked too delicate to be from the office, too intentional to be random. I found it waiting on the kitchen counter when I came in from mowing the front lawn. The scent of cut grass still clung to my shirt as I slipped off my shoes and glanced at the mail, then the box. "Someone's been good," I said, only half joking. My wife turned, smiling, a dish towel slung over her shoulder, the sleeves of her linen blouse pushed up past her elbows. She had that look about her, casual, polished, just a touch too breezy. "Oh, that? It's from work," she said with a quick shrug, picking up the knife to finish slicing peaches for the cobbler. "My boss is on a gratitude spree again. You know how corporate gets." She laughed, a soft, practiced thing that didn't quite meet her eyes. I nodded, but something in me pulled taut. Her boss? Since when did Bob from Finance gift anything wrapped like a Tiffany showcase? "Mind if I open it?" I asked, keeping my voice easy. "Be my guest," she said, already turning back to the stove. I loosened the ribbon so soft it barely resisted my fingers, and peeled the tape from one corner, slow as habit. The lid lifted with a sigh, revealing crisp tissue folded with care. Beneath it, nestled in black velvet, was a bottle of perfume sleek, expensive, foreign. Not a name I recognized, but the kind of thing chosen with thought. Intimate thought. A card sat beside it, tucked neatly under the tissue. Ivory cardstock, not the company's usual branded note. My hand paused just above it. "It came with a card," I said, half to her, half to the quiet growing in the room. She didn't turn around. "Probably just the usual thank you. Bob likes his little notes." I picked it up. It wasn't printed. It was handwritten. The pen had pressed hard into the paper confident strokes, slanted letters, unmistakably personal. "Can't wait to hold you again. Last weekend wasn't enough. Jay." My breath stilled in my chest. This wasn't from her boss. Not unless Bob had taken to signing notes like a man in love. I looked up from the card and watched her stir the peaches. Her shoulders moved in calm, circular motions. Too calm. Outside, the sprinklers clicked on. Water arched in slow, rhythmic bursts across the lawn. But in here, time had shifted. Something had cracked. The box, the bottle, the card, it all sat in front of me, like a still life painted in betrayal. And in that moment, I didn't say a word. But I knew. To be continued. There was a time when her laughter was mine. It filled our little apartment in those early years, back when money was tight and dreams were big. She used to leave me notes in the coffee tin, scribbled on receipts and scraps of napkins. "Don't forget you're my favorite," or "Dinner tonight, my place, your arms." We made inside jokes about the neighbors, had a ritual of splitting one chocolate bar in bed on Sundays, even cut our wedding cake with the same knife we'd used to open our first moving box. On our 8th anniversary, she gave me a photo of us at the county fair, laminated and cut into the shape of a heart. "So it won't wrinkle like we will," she said, winking. I carried it in my wallet for years, until it faded to ghosts. I remember her hair smelling like lavender, her laugh starting deep in her chest. Even arguments ended with forehead kisses, and one of us laughing at our own ridiculousness. But, lately, it had all started to thin. It began slowly, subtle, like a draft you don't notice until your bones feel it. She began spending more time at the office late meetings, back-to-back projects. She came home distracted, still tethered to her phone, her thumb brushing the screen with practiced intimacy. "I'm just catching up on emails," she'd say, but the way her lips curved at certain messages Didn't look like email laughter. She'd started dressing differently, too. More effort than usual. Not for me, never for me. Sleek lines, deeper colors, heels she used to call impractical. When I complimented her, she smiled politely, like I was one of the guests at a party she couldn't wait to leave. The silences between us grew like moss, soft, slow, but smothering. No fights, just absence. The absence of reaching hands in the dark. The absence of good morning said with warmth. The absence of her asking if I needed anything from the store, because now she stopped telling me she was going. And now this beautifully wrapped box, this bottle that smelled nothing like the lotions on our shared shelf, this card written by a hand I didn't know. I turned it over again and again when she wasn't looking. The ink had soaked into the cardstock slightly. It looked fresh, recent. Can't wait to hold you again. Again. The word pulsed in my ears. A repetition. A second time. A pattern. My wife walked past me to grab the pie dish, humming under her breath. I slid the card into my pocket. "I'll take the trash out," I said, voice level. She nodded without looking up. Outside, the sun had dipped behind the neighbor's oak tree, casting long shadows over our driveway. The air smelled faintly of honeysuckle and cut grass, but I couldn't taste the evening anymore. I tossed the gift box into the trash bin, but not the card. That stayed with me, warm against my leg like a brand. Back inside, she set the table. "Can you grab the wine?" she asked. I nodded. But I was already somewhere else. Already wondering who Jay was. Already picturing hands on her that weren't mine. And later that night, while she showered with the door locked, a habit she'd started just months ago, I sat in the hallway with the card in my hands and read it again. Because something inside me needed proof that what I feared wasn't just imagination. It was evidence. To be continued. I waited until she was asleep. Not just the surface kind of sleep where a floorboard creak might stir her, but the deep, curled up on her side sleep with breath slow and steady. I listened from the hallway for nearly 20 minutes, watching the clock, waiting for the stillness to settle. Then I went to the coat closet, reached into the inside pocket of my jacket, and pulled out the card. I'd folded it down to fit neatly into the pocket, but even flattened, the crease in the center couldn't hide its weight. Not in my hands, not in my mind. I laid it on the kitchen table, the same one where we used to play cards on rainy Saturdays. The same one where she once wrote me a birthday poem on a paper napkin and slid it under my morning coffee. That table had held sweetness. But tonight, it bore something colder. The handwriting was curved, confident, each letter slanted like it had leaned into her before. Not rushed, not impersonal. Each word chosen with care. Can't wait to hold you again. Again. I stared at that word, my eyes tunneling into it. My heart tried to argue. Maybe it's a joke. Maybe she's helping a friend. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. But then, the signature. Just the letter, J. No last name, no job title, no logo. Just the intimacy of someone who assumes they don't need to introduce themselves. I traced the edge of the paper like it might give more away. The card had the faintest scent, not of ink or paper, but of cologne. Something woodsy, expensive, not mine. My fingers trembled. Not with rage, not yet, but with the quiet violence of realization. In the days leading up to this, I'd chosen not to see. I'd ignored the way she flinched when I touched her shoulder as she typed. How she tucked her phone under the pillow instead of leaving it on the nightstand. How she'd started turning notifications off with a practiced flick. I remembered the overnight retreat 2 weeks ago. A leadership seminar, she'd said, with breakout sessions and trust falls. She came back with beach-swept hair and a new necklace that still had a tag mark on the chain. And then there were the clothes blouses with plunging backs, slacks tailored to hug more than hang. I'd said she looked nice once, trying to bridge the growing gap, and she'd smiled like a stranger offering customer service. Distant, perfect. Just felt like updating my wardrobe, she'd said. She hadn't updated it for me. I glanced down at the card again, this time with my jaw clenched. She wasn't laughing at her phone because of a meme. She wasn't working late because of spreadsheets. And J wasn't from accounting. I stared at her signature move, how she always said, "It's nothing," when something was clearly everything. And I realized that I had let myself become furniture. Convenient. Familiar. Ignored. But I wasn't going to be ignored anymore. I refolded the card carefully, slid it into a drawer beneath the placemats, and locked it with the tiny brass key we'd once used for spare cash. I'd needed proof if she tried to talk around the truth. Tomorrow, I'd ask her. Not accuse. Ask. I'd look her in the eyes and say, "Who's Jay?" And I'd know, not from what she said, but from what flickered across her face in that first half-second of silence. Because now, I wasn't afraid of the answer. I was just done pretending not to know. To be continued. It was a Sunday morning. Quiet. Gray. The kind where the sky hangs low and every sound feels heavier. I made the coffee like I always did, the smell curling through the kitchen in a familiar way that almost made me hesitate. Almost. She walked in still in her robe, scrolling her phone with the ease of someone practiced in looking away from real things. I waited until she set the mug down. Then I slid the card across the table. She blinked once, slowly. Her fingers froze over the handle of the cup. The moment stretched, silent and full of static. "What's this?" she asked, but her voice was already thinner than usual. "You tell me," I said. She glanced down. The card lay between us like an accusation too polite to shout. Her eyes scanned the ink, the familiar words. Her face didn't crumple. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She exhaled. Then, almost unbelievably, she smiled. Just a little. That tight, practiced kind of smile you use on strangers who've caught you in a lie and you're stalling. "It's not what you think," she said. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because hearing the oldest script in the book felt insulting. "You sure?" I said. "Because I think it says, 'Can't wait to hold you again.' That doesn't sound like Bob from accounting." She set her cup down with a clink. "It was a joke," she said quickly. "An inside thing. You know how people flirt at work. But it doesn't mean anything." "Flirt?" I repeated, my voice low. "So, this is flirting?" "I didn't say that," she snapped, then softened her tone immediately. "Look, it's complicated." "No," I said, "it's not." She stood up, turned her back to me, ran her hands through her hair. A move I knew too well. It used to mean frustration. Now it just looked like evasion. "I was lonely," she said finally. "You've been distant too. We don't talk like we used to. We're just existing next to each other." "That's what this is about?" I said. "You felt lonely, so you let someone else touch you?" She turned around, eyes glossy but dry. "I didn't plan it," she whispered. "But you let it happen," I said. Her silence then was the cleanest truth I'd heard all morning. I looked at her, really looked. At the woman who once laughed with me over burnt pancakes, who cried into my chest when her mother died, who held my hand through job losses and funerals and long, quiet nights. But the woman in front of me now, She was someone else. She opened her mouth like she wanted to keep talking, to say more, to twist the story tighter. But I was done listening. I stood up slowly, chair scraping softly against the wood. "I'm not angry," I said. "Not anymore." "Then stay," she said, her voice suddenly small. "We can fix it, we can talk." I shook my head. "If you wanted to talk, you would have done it before someone else did." I walked to the hallway, grabbed my keys from the bowl by the door, and slipped on my jacket. She followed me to the entryway, barefoot on cold tile, looking like a woman standing in the ruins of something she didn't know how to rebuild. "You're really leaving?" she asked. I turned the knob. "No," I said quietly. "I already left. You just didn't notice." And I stepped into the morning cool air on my face, the street empty, the sound of birds somewhere far away. Behind me, the door stayed open, but I didn't look back. To be continued. I didn't pack much. Just a duffel bag, the old Navy one I used to take on fishing trips, the one that still smelled faintly of cedar and lake wind. A few shirts, a pair of jeans, the toothbrush from the drawer we once shared. No fuss, no drama, just movement. The house was silent. That kind of hush that follows something loud, like after a slammed door or a shouted truth. But we hadn't shouted. There were no broken plates, no shattered glasses, only stillness. A marriage paused mid-sentence, the air thick with all the things that would never be said. She didn't follow me upstairs, didn't plead, didn't cry. Maybe she was still standing by the door. Maybe she'd already gone back to the kitchen and poured herself a drink. Maybe she was reading old texts from Jay. It didn't matter anymore. I walked into our bedroom, our once bedroom, and looked around one last time. The same curtains she picked out 6 years ago. The ones with the tiny blue flowers. The framed photo from our trip to Asheville still on her nightstand. A picture of two people who looked happy because they were. Before. I opened the closet. Empty hangers rattled softly like bones in the quiet. I didn't take much. I didn't want much. Just enough to move forward. But before I left, I did one last thing. I walked back down the stairs and into the kitchen. The card, the one she never bothered to explain, not really, was already sitting there on the counter where I'd left it earlier. I placed my wedding ring beside it. The ring felt heavier now, like it had soaked up all the weight of things unsaid. It had been on my hand for 21 years, through births and funerals, late-night laughter and early-morning regrets, but it had never felt colder than it did the past month. I looked at the ring, then at the card. 2 tokens of 2 truths. One promised forever. The other betrayed it. Behind me, the refrigerator hummed. The wind shifted the curtains. The world, unbothered, moved on. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe one. My steps were measured, calm. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently, but the sound still echoed, like a chapter ending, like a book shut for good, like the silence after goodbye. End.